you say?
Hello, it's Not the Average Gamers here today. Today we'll be talking about 5 things I currently hate about current gen gaming. And number 1 is DLC. I have a list. I'm a professional because I have a list. Okay. Okay, so number 1 is DLC. The problem I have with DLC is when I don't really have a problem with DLC in general. It's the fact that when a game requires DLC to be bought to play the rest of the game. Let's give some examples of that. Capcom with Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City, that's one of them. You only got 50% of the game, the other half of the game you had to buy from the PlayStation Store or Xbox Live. You had to pay another $15 just for the hero campaign, which is ridiculous. Another game that does this is, yep, you guessed it, another Capcom game, Asura's Wrath, which is like most of the game is DLC. And you know, I don't really have a problem with DLC when it is like, for example, like Skyrim. I haven't played any of the DLC on Skyrim, but I don't have a problem with it being when it's like, you know, 10, 15 hours of an expansion, you know, that's worth paying 15 extra bucks for. But if it's just, oh, the other half of the game needs to be bought, no, I'm not going to do that. The copying of ideas. Some games that do this, cough, Call of Duty, cough, Battlefield, you know, those games just, the modern shooters of the era today, they just take ideas from each other and implement them into their game and then sell it, and they make lots of money off of it. And most of the games that do this actually will fail anyways. The other ones that aren't as popular, like Medal of Honor, they used to be really good, but they didn't conform to the formula, and so they lost out. I don't like with current gen gaming that you have to do a certain thing, otherwise no one's going to buy your game. And plus, I hate the overuse of that certain idea. Like Call of Duty, they haven't changed since Modern Warfare. How many years ago was that? Like 2006? So in 7 years, they haven't changed their games. The best Call of Duty was Call of Duty 2. It was a World War II shooter. The best game that they ever made. Point number 3, game engine. I have a big problem with recycled game engines. For example, the Unreal Engine 3. That is a bad game engine. There are hundreds and hundreds, probably hundreds of games that just use the Unreal Engine and think they can get away with it. Heck, I even think Skyrim used some of it. If you look at Skyrim, compared to Gears of War graphics, it looks about the same. I can't stand game engines that just take it, the old game engine, just recycle it and make a new game out of it. They need to make their own game engine. That's how it should always be. Number 4, multiplayer. Multiplayer has ruined single player gaming. Honestly, if you look at gaming in the last couple of years, probably the last couple of 5 years, if the game only had single player, it would be way better, because then the developers could have used all their time and resources on single player only. But now they have multiplayer. They have to tie in multiplayer and single player to both mush them together into one awful game. Instead of, they could have made a multiplayer game, which would have been good, or they could have made a single player game, which would have been good. But when they mix them together, a lot of times it ends up like, ooh, Spec Ops The Line. That's an awful game. Or something like that. Anything like that, like Bulletstorm. Stuff like that. It's just not any good. It's just, they took too many things and tried to make them all at the same time, when it should be either one or the other, multiplayer or single player. Number 5 would be the overall decline in gaming in the last couple of years. For example, games have gotten shorter, they've been less challenging, except for Dark Souls, of course. Dark Souls and Demon Souls are very great games, but most games in general are just, you play through the game, The only way it gets harder is if you play it on the max difficulty, which means you die faster, and that's all. It adds, you get less health and you die faster, and that's about it. I wish they'd go back to like 90s / early 2000s. You know, we're gonna show you something real fast. Okay, here's an example of a good game. Shenmue. It's for the Dreamcast. That is a good game, an example of a good game. It was made in probably 98, something like that. And it's a single player only game. It's a long campaign. They never finished. They only made Shenmue and Shenmue 2. And that's an example of a good single player game. Most of the games now are just generic copying rip-offs of each other, and they don't have their own original like flow to their gameplay. And even horror games do this now. I'll give an example of that. Where are you, sir? Sir, where are you? Come out to your sleepy... Okay, here we go. Here are two bad horror games. Resident Evil 6 and Silent Hill Downpour. That just shows you two of the greatest horror games in the 90s. Boom. They're not any good anymore. This one has the worst combat of any game I've ever seen. This one is an action game. It's not even horror. That's great. Just conform, everyone. Conform! Yeah, so that is my thing on current gen gaming and why it sucks. Not always the case. Just about 50% of the time. So I'll catch you guys later in my next video. See ya. Have a great day. Bye. Okay, I'm going to delete this part of the video. Bye. Not the Average Gamers, signing off.